lively, it's unrehearsed. We call it Moral Side of the News each and every week. We're glad you're here this weekend. I'm John Blim with the WHAS Crusade for Children. With me, a distinguished panel as always, Reverend Harriett Akins-Banman, Centenary United Methodist Church, New Albany, Reverend Sally McClain, Christian Church Disciples of Christ, Rabbi Emerita Gaylia Rooks, the Temple, and Father Joe Graffis, Archdiocese of Louisville. Our first topic: thousands of students headed back to school this week, only to have classes canceled after day one. The superintendent of Jefferson County Public Schools has apologized for the, quote, transportation disaster, which included the last student dropped off by a bus just before 10 p.m. A severe bus driver shortage is part of this problem. Panel, turning to you, a couple of questions. What grade would you give the changes in start times and bus routes for JCPS, and what's your advice to those parents?
Well, I'm not going to give him a grade. I'm going to give him an incomplete. I think total disaster was a very polite way of putting it. I just can't imagine being a parent and your kid not getting home till 9:58 p.m. And the advice that I give the parents is take a deep breath. And clearly, Marty Polio is very upset, very apologetic, trying to make things better. I think it was a really good call to give everyone the rest of the week off and pay the bus drivers to practice their routes. No one wanted this. Certainly the bus drivers don't want to be working that long and that hard. And certainly the students don't want that. And certainly the schools and the parents and I don't mean to minimize what a disaster, to use his word, this was. But I think we need to keep it in context. Thank God everyone's safe. Thank God the mistake is being owned up to, and they're working on fixing it. It always takes a while to get things running smoothly. I don't think it's ever been this disastrous, but just, when you think about, oh my gosh, something horrible happened with the schools, take a breath. And this was not a good thing. This was definitely a disaster, but everyone's all right. And we will improve, learn from it, move forward, hopefully soon and smoothly. And I hope it's the worst thing that happens in any school system all over the country for the whole year.
I like your voice of giving it an incomplete. I think that was very grace-filled and very, very appropriate because it means that there's room for improvement, right? And the thought that came for the parents is to allow your anger to work for you, to work with the school, and to be a voice that will continue to be there for your child, but at the same time to do it in such a way that it might be heard. So to let that anger work for you, to work out the positive next steps to make this a productive year for everyone. And what a gift it would be, Gaylia, if this was the biggest hiccup the school system has for the whole year.
Yeah,
thanks, Joe. I would admit I would be very concerned if it were almost 10 o'clock and my child wasn't home. I don't know if they have a central number that people can call and say the bus is en route and your child will be such and such time delivered. I don't know if they have that kind of network going on. That would be a big comfort if they did. If they had
my understanding is that all the parents were informed. Whether the kids had, I don't even know what age they were that were that late, but whether the kids had cell phones or whatever, every parent was contacted. But even if your kid is safe, that they're not getting home until, 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night.
But there's a big difference between knowing whether they're safe and knowing whether or not there's been a wreck or something, tragic has happened. So as long as they know they're en route, I would feel comfort just in that. And I'm sure they have something like that set up. So the parents were notified. Then I think that's a wise move.
I think one of the things, I have great sympathy for parents and all of this. I mean, there are so many things that are going on this year. And one of concerns of some organizations I've been a part of, even talking with Dr. Polio, was you're trying to do so many things, a new school assignments policy, a new literacy program, a new bus assignments, all these things at once, which I can't imagine they can get everything going at once in all of this. It was just too much. And God knows that the teachers are going crazy with all of this as well. So I don't know when it's incomplete, but they've known this bus situation since March. You would think that they have done practices upon practices upon practices getting ready for yesterday, but obviously whatever it was not enough, or some communication didn't happen. And, they did spend $119,000 on this bus plan. So it's like, oh my heavens, that's a lot of money that could go to a lot of teachers and students. And not to get it right, that company's got to do a lot of hustling as well. But my concern is not so, and I agree with everything you've said about the busing and being safe, but I'm also concerned about new assignments. I'm also concerned about the new literacy program. Is this that everybody has to implement this year? They've done that several times over the last 20 years, and each program has flopped. So, or it has not been the best program for special needs kids or kids that are struggling the most. So it doesn't lead for a lot of confidence in decision makers sometimes and how they're implementing those decisions.
Is the decision maker the school board, or is it coming out of Frankfurt?
I think most of these things are all, the legislature has something to do with the literacy program and obviously the transgender bill and all that kind of stuff, but that's got nothing to do with busing and all those assignment types of things.
Correct. Well, they're all decided locally. Go ahead, Harriet. Go ahead.
Well, there's the other backstory about shortage of bus drivers. And so how do you, take care of that problem as well? Because you want those who are behind the wheel to be properly trained and to be able to handle. I look at a school bus as a station wagon on steroids, and it's full of kids, and so you want that scenario to be safe. And so last night on the news, you may have seen there was video of a student sent to her parent of students that were 4 in a seat, and some were standing up, and it was very crowded. So there's so much to this story to unpack and to make it work well for the students.
And some kids were sent to the wrong school.
Right.
So, wow. All of those kind of things.
And there were problems with that, that company they hired from out of state, the experts to figure this out. They didn't even know what they were doing. They had some kids originally were supposed to cross a highway to get to their bus stop. Right. This has been a problem since whenever it came out. Did you say March? Yes. I don't remember when, but this has been in the making. And JCPS is huge, and I know that they try. I know that they've tried many things. When we moved here 35 years ago, my daughter was and then I had my son, and so we had young kids, and we went through CARA, the Kentucky Education Reform Act. The ungraded primary was fabulous. My daughter in first grade was with the third graders for reading. And then when she was in the second grade, they just let her go to the library. She was, and she's extraordinarily gifted in that area. She, not so much in the math. And I just felt like a lot of students were falling through the cracks. And I have seen efforts to change that over and over, different, this, that, the other. And, I've said this before, money can't fix every problem, but I really believe that throwing money at this situation would really make a difference. I think you'd have more bus drivers and you'd have a larger pool to choose from. So hopefully better bus drivers if you paid them more. I think the same thing goes with teachers. I have a friend who was in the JCPS system and just they don't listen to their teachers. And she finally left and was willing to sub at a school near her home. And now, and she was a fabulous substitute teacher. I mean, she won the Apple Award or something, the Kentucky Outstanding Teacher. She's just, and the way she loves those kids and takes care of them so far above and beyond and everything. And now they're saying that substitute teachers have to go where they're assigned. They can't only go to their local nearby schools. So, I mean, if that's the case, they're going to lose her again. Yeah, there needs to be some common sense added in with this. And I don't pretend to understand I know that especially schools that are not in the most favorable districts, that it's harder to get teachers to go there. I know a new teacher starting out, and I felt like she deserved hazardous duty pay for where she was.
They did up the salaries for some of the teachers in those schools. They did do that this past year.
Well, and I hope it's making a difference.
Well, I do hope, as you suggest, Gaylia, that they took a breath, the parents. Because I remember one night my children were coming back with their dad from Cincinnati, and it was 11:30 that he called and said, I'm on the way home. I woke up at 3:30, they weren't home. At 5:30, they got home, and I just happened to call the police, the state police. They were behind the Carrollton bus accident.
Uh-huh.
And so they said, it's been a bus accident. And I said, are you sure it's a bus? And they said, yes. So that's my own personal thing about being able to be in contact with whatever the situation is.
Right. But we didn't all have cell phones back in those days. And that was right. And so that was really scary.
It was.
I wonder what the implications for the classroom will be with missing these days and with the stress that the students will already come in with, especially the younger ones that might have found yesterday's experience pretty traumatizing or upsetting. How will that, how do they recover that? I feel for the teachers having to jump start.
They said they were going to count these 2 days as snow days.
Right.
Starting school. I have a friend whose daughter just started kindergarten. Actually, I have two friends whose daughters started kindergarten. And, having nothing to do with the busing and, any trauma or fears that went on there, just the fact that, we started and now we have Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. What is that going to do? But we can do it.
We can certainly offer prayers for all the people involved.
Right. The children, the parents, the teachers, the bus drivers, and Marty.
And the administration.
All right, panel, that's a good way to wrap that first topic up on Moral Side of the News. We have a couple more to get to, and thank you for watching and listening to our program. Second topic, turning to politics. We've had time to analyze last weekend's Fancy Farm picnic, where those running for office took to the microphone. Unlike past years, Donald Trump's name was not mentioned once. Even Daniel Cameron, who promoted his campaign for governor with an endorsement by the former president in the primary election, he did not utter Trump's name once. It was much the same in Iowa, where 7 GOP hopefuls took to the stage. 5 of them did not talk about the former president. Panel, Trump still has what some call a cult following, despite being shunned by some members of his own party. What do you think?
I think it's a cult following.
I think it's a mess for sure. And unfortunately, it's about truth and whether you believe the truth or you have a false sense of truth. And everybody accuses everybody else about all that kind of stuff. and we can't establish truth, which is kind of crazy to me. But everybody is scared to death of former President Trump. But he owns 35% of the population who has seemed to worship whatever he says and believe whatever he says, no matter what. And that 35% forces all the other people to say, well, I don't want to say anything one way or another. And the country loses with all of that. That's for sure.
First of all, I hope the judicial system holds up and stands firm. That's my prayer for this next few weeks. The second week, I'm trying to figure out how many in our congregations support Trump and how they see that Christianity and Trump go together. It's always been amazing to me that the person who stands for what Trump stands for, and they're following him, and yet they call themselves Christian, just seems like some sort of paradox that just doesn't work.
I will agree with you on the paradox word, but not on the Christian word, because it's not just Christians.
Well,
there are Jews, there are Muslims, there are, Baha'i, Hindu, Buddhist.
But I'm saying in our congregations, in our churches, those of us who are Christian, how that does work. I don't know about the others, but I know that probably in my congregation that I attend now, I would surmise that more than 50% would vote for Trump again. And they believe that, and they do not see the inconsistency of what he teaches and what he's saying, of course, as what Jesus taught.
When I was reading about the not mentioning of that person's name, I wondered, did they all get a memo? Like, did they all go together and say, okay, look, guys, when we go to the mic, this is the word we will not say. And by its very
to be named.
Yes. And by the very absence, then there's a volume to it. And those of us who are listening, I think we lean into that and wonder what is that about? Is it a pulling away from? Is it a distancing? Is it a wait until what happens with all the judicial business? What I think concerns me is that he can still be considered to be running for the highest office of the land. And have all of this, all of these court dates facing him. How did we get there as this country at this particular moment in our history? And what are we to learn, and how can we pull back and regain some momentum and strength and energy around what is truth and how to live that out and how to have that present and viable through the person who is in that office? I'm very dumbfounded, and Fancy Farm just kind of put an exclamation point on that for me.
I agree with everybody that, principles of all religions do talk about respect and talk about compassion and talk about concern for others, the common good, and all those kind of things. And yet, even in this whole movement of the legal system, to be able to criticize the legal system, and all systems are fallible, but to just in many ways just paint everyone who's against you as crazy idiots, out of it, and just persecuting us, and not only the former president, but I represent all of you and they're persecuting all of you, is like, this makes no sense whatever to me. And again, for people who have religious values, I don't see how you can support someone who does those kinds of things.
One of my things has always been that you want the leaders of the country to be mentors for your children. in some regard, you do. I mean,
Role models.
and to be civil. And how can you want that for your child? How can you want what Trump stands for your child? Would you really want that in your family? How is that possible? Can you not see the inconsistency? And my fear is mass riots. Should something happen, should he be incarcerated? Should he not be allowed to run? Should, I mean, on and on the shoulds could go. So I'm hoping and praying that to have faith in the judicial system, which has always been our strong point. Always been our strong point.
And we only have to look at yesterday when the gentleman out west, was planning on trying to assassinate the president and a few other people. And he was not very far from the site where the president was going to be. That scares the crap out of me. Pardon the expression. But that, again, that violence and all that kind of stuff. And I hear all the time from parents, "Oh, Father, we got to stop the bullying in the schools." And I said, where do the kids learn this? If they watch television, it's all over television. And that's an almost impossible to go against that kind of system when people are not held accountable for it.
And as you were saying, I do think that when I was a child, the president was a role model. I mean, it was. It's all wound up together. I got a fundraising email request thing. I get millions of them, and it was help us elect people who believe in science. And I was like, how did we get to this point where we don't even believe in science? I mean, help us elect women, I understand, help us elect minorities, people of color, help us elect, based on the issues. But that one just really stood out. And I realized, it just seems to all be going hand in hand, which is what scares me the most. The conspiracy fueled, that there is a deep state conspiracy, things like that, the guns and the violence, the leadership that, Father Joe, you mentioned bullies. In my opinion, Trump is the ultimate bully. I don't understand how he can make fun of disabled people and veterans and he has very thin skin, which is not good for a politician. He takes offense very easily, but he also gives offense very easily. So, I don't know how we got here. I fear for our democracy. I have friends and relatives who are looking into other places to go. My brother's applied for citizenship in Portugal. It's hopefully the arc always does bend toward justice, and we will see that in our lifetime.
I can't grasp that there are that many people in the United States that are such malcontents, that they are so dissatisfied with the country that we live in, having two children that were soldiers and being in war-torn countries and seeing the poverty and the despair and the awfulness that they will never forget seeing. They will never forget seeing. Mm-hmm. And we live here and we're so disgruntled. What has happened to our attitude of gratitude? What has happened to that?
And it's like, I have a friend who uses this expression that the chickens are voting for Colonel Sanders. When the Republicans talk about slashing Medicare and Medicaid and education and all the rest of that, I can't understand how anyone but the wealthiest of people could be supportive of that. And I also, the whole thing about education, if you can dumb down the population, it's easier to control them. And I don't know. I try not to give in to despair, but I pray a lot.
Well, I think we started today with education and some of the challenges of education. And I've always believed in education. I had parents and grandparents who believed in education and a liberal arts education, trying to understand people, try to understand history, the world. I loved history and all that kind of stuff. And it seems like to some extent we want to narrow education into just certain trails of thinking, and anything else we don't want to understand. We don't want to understand people of other countries and their culture and how their culture is different than ours. But maybe we can learn a lot from those cultures. I think we can learn a lot, because we're not always the best and the brightest and we think, American exceptionalism. Yeah, we've done some great things as a country, but we've also done some disastrous things, as we think of the atomic weapons, and we don't need to go in that today, but all those kind of things. And how do we educate people to say, what is a democracy about? How does law work? How do court systems work? How do all these kind of systems, are they perfect? No, nothing is perfect, but we try to work through those systems and change what needs to be changed and adjust, but work
for the
together.
Better of all, and for more justice and more equality, not less.
And we also invite people, and especially students, give them the opportunity to learn how to think. It's just not educating and pouring facts into them, right? But inviting them to think, and to think critically, so that they can respond to what is before them in the world they live in which to make it better. Because at the end of the day, don't we want them all to be good citizens of the world?
Right. And ask good questions.
Indeed.
I'm going to ask a good question and say, we're out of time. That's not a question, that's a statement, I guess. But we are out of time. And I want to say thanks to Harriett Akins-Banman, Sally McClain, Gaylia Rooks, and Joe Graffis. Thank you for watching and listening to Moral Side of the News. You can catch it anytime again on YouTube, and it's also a podcast. Pick it up wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, when the conversations continue, thank you, panel. We'll see you next time. As it's back to school time, it's a great time to consider a donation to the WHAS Crusade for Children. Just go to WHAScrusade.org. That's WHAScrusade.org, and see all the many ways you can make a difference. Plus, you can always mail your donation to 520 West Chestnut Street, Louisville, Kentucky, 40202. Thanks for changing a child's life with a donation to the WHAS Crusade for Children.